Ready one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with the Empress of Bailing'S March and final Bail wrap-up. Let me explain. I am the self-proclaimed Empress of Bailing. I used to be the mere Queen of Bailing, but given my, I think, January bails of this year, I elevated myself. And these are all the books I bailed on in March. And this is the last monthly wrap-up of any kind you will see on my channel. I have decided not to do any more monthly wrap-ups of books read or books bailed on. I never did do TBRs. I think I did TBRs 1 month, and I think TBRs are ridiculous for me. And I'm going to continue to do book hauls, but not on a monthly basis, just on a whenever I feel like it basis. But I don't enjoy doing wrap-up videos. I guess I enjoy doing bail wrap-up videos more because I still have all the venom and I can do it energetically, but it takes a lot of work, a lot of energy to prepare, to sink back into my reactions to the books I've read during the month and give an energetic presentation of them when a lot of the earlier ones I've kind of forgotten about. So no, I'm not going to do them anymore. From now on, if you want to see what I'm reading, what I'm bailing on, you must, that sounds bitchy, you should, you are cordially invited to watch my Friday Reads videos. That's where everything will be. I will also be doing a lot of one book, one review videos as I have been already, but I'm not doing monthly wrap-ups anymore. This is it. Without further ado, here are the books that I bailed on. I think there are 9, which would be far more than the books that I actually completed last month. So it was a bit of a bailing massacre of a month. The first one was a book from the Basque territory, which is a semi-autonomous region bordering Spain and France. I've kind of forgotten the details because the book was so awful, but it's called Twist by Harkates Cano. I will put the translator in the show notes. I don't want to embarrass her because it was an awful translation. But I enjoyed the first chapter or so. It's about a victim of the political strife, separatist stuff going on there, that was murdered by the police 20 years ago, and he, in terms of the story, comes back to life. Wasn't sure whether that scenario was going to work for me, but I was interested in where we were going. But then, at about the 10% mark, I read the following paragraph. This is some of the worst prose I have ever encountered in a lifetime of reading, and I bailed immediately. Please listen to this. She didn't call him in tears, but rather after having cried. She pointlessly tried to hide it from him. Lascano's job required that he observe the human condition, instincts, yearnings, impulses, and construct coherent fiction based on such observations. Details are his life. It's the only ability he has that he can be proud of. And so he immediately noticed his mother's unease. That is just disgusting that a publisher, Archipelago Books, should be ashamed of themselves for publishing such garbage prose. Come on! Archipelago Books is really hit and miss for me. I can only think of one book that wasn't garbage. They should be ashamed of themselves, and I got this as a NetGalley book, so this is my honest review. Bye-bye NetGalley, maybe. I don't care. Come on! That just makes me angry. Did you notice? Did I have to explain that? Bail! Next one I don't feel quite so strongly about, but this was Taduno Song by Odafe Atugun, a Nigerian novel. And I was a little skeptical about the scenario going in, and that's ultimately what did me in by around the... Well, I read about half of it, listened to about half of it on audio. It was really good on audio, too. The protagonist, his name is Taduno, he went into exile. I never did quite gather whether it was internal exile within Nigeria or external. It wasn't really clear. But then he came back to Lagos and nobody knew him anymore. Like, everybody around him had amnesia about him. I think that the author was trying to make a clever statement about how people cope with authoritarianism, but I thought that was a really limp plot device from the very beginning. His girlfriend has disappeared, but his next door neighbors, he goes back to his house and they say, "Who are you? Why are you trying to break into this house? That person moved away a long time ago," but they don't recognize him, and that just was really clunky from the beginning, but I stayed with it because I was enjoying the story otherwise. But no. Nope. So I bailed. Other people might enjoy it. Certainly the writing was fine, and the audio narration was really good. But I probably won't remember poor Taduno either. Next, and I have a review video, I'm not going to say much more. Manhattan Beach, Jennifer Egan. Women's Prize long list. Wasn't it on another National Book Award list or something last year? It's the most stunningly boring book I ever tried to read in my life. Check out my video. Next is another novel by a Nigerian-American novelist, Speak No Evil by Uzodinma Iweala. I read his debut, Beast of No Nation, about 10 years ago when it came out. Quite enjoyed it. This was a gay-themed novel. I will try it again. I was doing it on audio, and I don't know what was going on with the audio narrator, because I've heard him narrate books before, and he started this book off really well, but by about chapter 4, there was this offhandedness that crept into his voice and never left. Like there was a distancing stance, and it was so palpable. Is that the right word for audio? It was so audible, it was so palpable, that I couldn't continue to listen. Like, he just seemed like he didn't care about what he was saying. So I stopped. So I might try the book, but I've heard very mixed reviews of the book too, so probably not for me. But it's about a gay Nigerian high school student. Then his dad finds out he's gay, and I know that it ends up very violently. It seemed like it wasn't going to be for me, but I might try it again. If I hear some more positive reviews, I will pick up the book. It's got a beautiful cover, hey? Another one, sadly, was another new book published this month. This one from Japan, Go, by Kazuki Kaneshiro. And this was about a Korean-Japanese guy, and it started out really good. I raved about it on Friday Reads when I first started it. And this one, I think many of you would like it. It might be a book for many of you, but I listened to, I think, about half. I think I listened to 2/3 of it. And then it got into a high school love story, and all of the stuff about his cultural identity and all of those conflicts and stuff that had been foregrounded just disappeared from the story, and it was just a high school love story, and it was like, no! I can't. I'm too old. I can't read about high school love stories. So I bailed, but you might like it. Moving on. I tried a book of poetry by William Carlos Williams called Sour Grapes, and they were some of the most boring, flat poems that I've ever read. I read about 10, and each poem had about 922 exclamation points, and I don't do poetry with exclamation points, sorry, but more than that, it was just, no, it's an early book of his. Of course, he's a wonderful poet. Many people think I've enjoyed some of his poetry, but not these. Not this collection. Another disappointment, because I've been looking forward to it for months, and it has the best cover, probably, of 2018. Bury What We Cannot Take by Kirsten Chen, another March debut novel. And this was about a Chinese family in 1957 living on an island off the coast of China, and the mother takes a hammer to the portrait of Chairman Mao on the wall and destroys it, and her grandson, who's about 12 years old, turns her in, like he reports her. Opening premise, just incredible, right? But I read about, didn't read much, 15%. The characters didn't come alive for me at all. The writing was not impressive, so I bailed. Others may disagree. Another disappointment this month, because the first chapter just knocked me off my feet, was The Towers of Trebizond by Rose Macaulay, a 1956 novel, and this is NYRB Books edition. And I love the first chapter where the famous first line, "Take my camel, dear," said my Aunt Dot as she climbed down from this animal on her return from High Mass. So it's just crazy, and it's about Aunt Dot, and the narrator is her niece. They go off to Turkey to proselytize and look at old Christian temples or whatever in Turkey. But the first chapter is just a scream where the narrator gives the family history and its complicated relationship to Anglicanism and Catholicism in the UK. And it's so funny. It reminded me of a really cerebral version of Barbara Pym's humor, much more cerebral. But I loved it. And then they go to Turkey, and it just turned so racist so quickly. The humor was all poking fun at those silly Turks and their silly ways. And I have such a low tolerance for that. Like, British satire, I'm not a great reader of satire anyway, but I would say all satire, but in this case, British satire works when you're poking fun at your own culture. But as soon as you veer off and start poking fun at another culture, especially when there's a racial difference like that, I couldn't handle it, so I bailed. Too bad. I heard Mel of Mel's Bookland Adventure had a very similar experience the same week as me with another of her novels, so she's off my list. The last one, and I talked about this on my Friday Reads last week, was the new novel, again published this March this year, by Jessie Ball, called Census. And I'm just going to I'm going to quote my Goodreads review in full. "This is a novel about a census taker. This is a novel about a census taker. This is a novel about a..." It was so boring. I loved his earlier novel, How to Set a Fire and Why. It's one of my favorite books that I've read in the last few years, but this was a snooze fest. Alright, so those are my bails. If you enjoyed this video and you want to hear about more of my bails in the future, you're going to have to tune into Friday Reads, where I will be talking about bails and books completed and books started on a weekly basis, but no more monthly wrap-ups. Thanks for watching.